Hey, in this week's episode, we're here with world famous Gene Patterson, the Hall of Famer. Everybody knows of Gene, you know, but we're going to get some of the stuff he did before Bigfoot. Everybody remembers you as Bigfoot and Snakebite. Tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Well, let me tell you, Jeff, it's a pleasure to be here first. And when I got started in monster trucks, I was like a lot of fans that we have today. I was fascinated with the big tires. I saw them in the magazines and thought, man, I'd love to do that one day. A local friend of mine, I still call him a friend, and a Hall of Famer, John Breen, was building a monster. He had a street truck he drove, and back then a lot of your monster trucks started out on the street and was driven down and around to different shows. And I introduced myself and hung around, and one day I was going by shop and there was a Blazer being built on 66s. And I told him I could get that truck in a magazine, and being the big mouth I was at that time, he said, yeah, sure kid, whatever. And I literally took over 100 and some photographs, and it was published in a magazine back then called Four Wheel and Off-Road. And then John was impressed, and I helped him do a little bit of building on it. He took me on the road, and then as years progressed, the monster truck scene was getting bigger, and he built a truck called Stomper Bully. And we was at a show one day at a fair in New Hampshire, and he tossed me the keys and he said, here, start driving, I'm going to build another race truck. And he built a Mad Dog Racer to run on the TNT circuit.
Okay, so then from then you took Stomper out on the road then?
Yes,
I did. Because that was kind of a deal with US Hot, or was it US?
It was TNT.
Or TNT.
TNT started
USA.
the Stomper Bully, and they were sponsored by that Galoob Toy Company.
Okay.
And Ed Hart was with NTPA, and then he started running Hart Productions. And he went out, and they were having a little bit of problem getting the we call it the factory Stomper Bully for TNT built. So Ed called John, said, we need a truck. Can you build a truck? And John whipped Stomper Bully like 37 days or something. I mean, it was a factory Silverado street truck, stripped the running gear, square tube, throw some big case axles on it with some planetaries. It was the first planetaries that Breen ever ran. We had to set up like the barefoot truck with the rear end going up through a Corvette rear end to get to the reduction we needed. And we got it out, and we ran about probably 6 months before the TNT-based Stomper Bully came out. And we competed against Bigfoot every week.
Okay. And
Bobby Breen, who drove Wild Hair later, he was my crew person, and he went on the road with me. Well, as things moved forward to the racing days of TNT, Bobby wanted to drive, and that left me on the outside looking in because with family, and I understood that, so I called up Bigfoot and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. And they said, well, back then they filmed everything, and Bob and them, we went up and I tried out. We had like a Days of Thunder type training school.
Okay.
And then they called me like a week later and said, we love what we saw before. We know you can handle the trucks. Jim Kramer needs to spend more time in the shop. We can fly him in and out. You can get the rig and get everything to the shows and do displays at Ford dealers need be, because you've got experience. And that's how I ended up at Bigfoot then. And then, of course, everything moved fast forward from there.
Okay.
But it was pretty fast 3 years of getting into the monsters and then being able to work for the elite fleet at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Was just huge. I mean, a young kid from Tuscaloosa, Missouri, I mean, this is a dream, you know?
Yeah.
But then it became a nightmare.
So then, now which Bigfoot did you run then? Was it number 4?
When I first started out, I started driving Bigfoot number 3.
3.
I did a few shows with 2. Very limited 4. And then Kramer, of course, was in, he just jumped out of 4 and went into 6 and 7, and I drove 6 and 7. I driven everything that we had in some form or another, except for, like, my last truck I drove was, well, it was the display number 12, but 10 competitively. And then everything from that forward, I've moved them around arena floors in recent years and got behind the wheel with the whole safety thing they have going on now, and it's they're fitted to the drivers. So it's not like in the olden days where if you got hurt, somebody, your crew guy, could get in it and go do a show. Now everything is self-contained seats and placement and shifters, and everything is fit for you. It's just like an Indy car or something.
Yeah.
You just can't swap somebody out. Put them in it.
So let's go back and talk a little bit about the Stomper Bully. You told us how you got involved with Bigfoot,
Yeah.
but tell a little bit more on the Stomper.
Well, the Stomper Bully, and I call it Stomper, was the TNT people saw the emergence of the monster trucks. Of course, the pullers, it was a sore subject. If you go back and look at a lot of early footage, there's some great pullers out there with the US Hot Rod and the TNT days, and guys would actually came up to Kramer at events later and would be sitting on the nose of their pulling trucks and said, you know, if you touch this truck crushing cars, you know, you're gonna pay. So they were very reserved because they thought they were the show, and pulling has got its own place in past history, but TNT people saw that monster trucks was the wave of the future.
Yeah.
And as the trucks, more and more people were building monster trucks. And the Stomper Bully was a Chevrolet because they had a huge Chevrolet sponsorship at the time, and they built it as Chevrolet versus Bigfoot. And in that late 80s era, in the program, it had all their dates, what everybody used to put in there, and it showed Stomper Bully versus Bigfoot. And that's what I did, but I was on the pulling side of it. And to build the Stomper that fast, we used to call it, John bought a Monte Carlo for $400. It had a big block Chevy in it. He took the motor out, the transmission out. We used the disc brakes off the front. I mean, you could build it back then. Now everything is custom built.
Yeah.
But that's how we started. And it had a single carburetor on it. And with the planetaries that we had, you could do these indoor arena shows and car crush all day long. It was only about 6-8 months into it that we actually put injection on the truck and didn't even run a blower motor, but we were in such small buildings.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned probably to drive the most, because you had not only you had to read cars, you could tell what cars was going to fold over, you could tell how to line cars up, and we used to have to do that back in the day, was stagger the cars if they were small cars, and you had pullers to the right, pullers to the left, and you're crushing these cars, and you learn to maneuver trucks
In a very tight spot.
yes.
Yeah.
And to do that like we do a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday afternoon show. So I got a lot of seat time.
Yeah.
And then when the MTRA become involved, the Monster Truck Racing Association, John Breen was one of the early forefathers, I guess is how you say it, to help Bob. And John and Bob go back all the way back to the Lesterville, Missouri days, when they used to take their street trucks and Bigfoot street trucks down to the river and play in the river. So John and Bob both had a similar path coming through the monster truck industry, and I felt like John, the more he explained that to me, I mean, the tires on the Mad Dog 2 Blazer was actually a set off of Bigfoot number 2. They were stripers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know people called them stripers until even, I don't know, it was a long time. I just thought that's the way the tires work. But Bob found a used set. They were building the trucks as fast as they could to get them out there, and Bigfoot 2, the photo shoot, had those tires with the stripers on them. Mm-hmm. And then John ran them, and we put them on the Stomper Bully, and we ran them forever, and then he ran them on the Wild Hair trucks.
Okay.
I mean, but for doing displays, they just didn't look good.
Yeah, some of them tires, it's funny, but they were on a lot of different trucks.
Oh yeah, they made their rounds a lot. So that's competing against, I got to know a lot of the people from Bigfoot, as I said earlier, and I enjoyed the pulling side of it, because it was kind of a kickback atmosphere, but I also saw that these events that they were starting to go to a lot of the bigger buildings, and I knew that I wanted to perform on that stage too. And our first big event was the Houston Astrodome, when it was a big battle of the monster trucks, and we had both Stomper Bullies there, and Bigfoot had one of theirs, and they had the little shuttle there. But a lot of teams at that event was running 15,000 pound monster trucks that were set up to do car crushing. They got on that big floor, and we were lost. You need a GPS to figure out where we're supposed to go. And a lot of guys left on the hook of a wrecker, including that big guy from Virginia. And we all know where he's at now, but it's to where we're at now is just fold over. I mean, after that event, the TNT people saw the writing on the wall. And they knew that monster trucks was the wave of the future, and of course then they got bought out. Over the camera part.
So you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That could have been a good
Come on,
blooper
JJ.
reel. What the heck?
Well, okay.
All right, we're
Sorry.
ready.
I'm ready now too.
Okay.
Go for it.